Hey, I'm Dr. Carter, and today I want to talk about the most misunderstood drug in medicine right now. Not because it doesn't work, it does remarkably well, but because the conversation about it has been almost entirely focused on the wrong thing. Everyone is talking about how much weight people lose on Ozempic, the before and after photos, the celebrity stories, the waiting lists at pharmacies, and almost nobody is talking about what it actually does inside the human body, what it does to the heart, what it does to the brain, what it does to the kidneys, what researchers are now calling its most important effects, and they have nothing to do with the number on the scale. That's what this channel is for, the science behind the headlines, the full picture your doctor doesn't always have time to explain. Subscribe now and turn on the bell. New videos every week. What if Ozempic is not primarily a weight loss drug? What if weight loss is just the most visible effect of something far more profound? A drug that activates one of the most protective biological systems in the human body, reduces cardiovascular events by 20% in landmark clinical trials, slows biological aging at the cellular level, protects the brain against neurodegeneration, and may represent the first drug in history that simultaneously addresses multiple major causes of death in adults over 50? This is not speculation. This is the conclusion emerging from a series of major clinical trials published between 2023 and 2026. Trials that enrolled tens of thousands of patients ran for years and produced results that have fundamentally changed how leading researchers think about this entire class of medications. Dr. Eric Topol, director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute and one of the most respected voices in cardiovascular medicine, put it directly. This is a class of medicines providing potent anti-inflammatory effects in the body and the brain, even before there is 1 pound of weight loss, even before 1 pound of weight loss. That single sentence changes everything about how you should understand what GLP-1 receptor agonists actually are. Today I am going to show you what the 2026 research actually reveals about this class of drugs, beyond the weight loss story, and what it means specifically for adults over 50 who are thinking about their heart, their brain, their kidneys, and how long they want to live well. And the finding in section 4 is the one that stops researchers cold, because it suggests GLP-1 drugs may do something that no drug has ever convincingly done before. Stay until the end, because the final section will give you a framework for having a completely different conversation with your doctor about this class of medications. Let's get into it. Before we get to the evidence, I need to establish something that most people, including many physicians, don't fully appreciate about how GLP-1 receptor agonists actually work. The conventional explanation is this: GLP-1 drugs mimic a gut hormone that tells the brain you're full, slow gastric emptying, and stimulate insulin release. You eat less. You lose weight. The weight loss improves metabolic health. That explanation is true, but it is profoundly incomplete, and the incompleteness is exactly why most people are missing the bigger story. Here is what the research has revealed over the last 3 years. GLP-1 receptors are not confined to the pancreas and the gut. They are distributed throughout virtually every organ system in the human body. The heart has GLP-1 receptors. The brain has GLP-1 receptors in the hippocampus, in the cortex, in the regions governing appetite, mood, and memory. The kidneys have GLP-1 receptors. The liver has GLP-1 receptors. Immune cells have GLP-1 receptors. This means that when a GLP-1 receptor agonist enters the bloodstream, it is not simply telling the brain to eat less. It is simultaneously activating receptor sites in multiple organ systems, producing effects on cardiovascular function, neuroinflammation, renal filtration, hepatic metabolism, and immune regulation that are entirely independent of any weight change. This distinction, direct organ-level effects versus effects mediated through weight loss, is the most important scientific development in GLP-1 research of the last 3 years, and it is what elevates this class of drugs from a weight loss intervention to something potentially far more significant. The SELECT trial was the first major study to prove this directly. It enrolled 17,604 adults with cardiovascular disease who were overweight or obese but did not have diabetes. The result, a 20% reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events, was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. The cardiovascular protection appeared too quickly and too consistently to be explained by weight reduction alone. The drug was doing something directly to the cardiovascular system. That trial opened a door, and what researchers have found behind it is reshaping the entire field. Here is what the evidence now shows. Effect number 1: cardiovascular protection, 20% reduction in heart attacks and strokes. The SELECT trial result was not a one-off finding. It has been replicated, extended, and deepened across multiple subsequent analyses. The 20% reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death, appeared in people without diabetes, confirming that the mechanism is not simply blood sugar management. Researchers now believe GLP-1 receptors in cardiac muscle and arterial endothelium directly reduce vascular inflammation, the same inflammatory process that drives most fatal heart attacks. A 2026 study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found cardiovascular risk reduction signals in broader populations, not just people with established heart disease. The implication is significant. The protective effect may not require pre-existing cardiovascular disease to manifest. For adults over 50, where cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death and where subclinical vascular inflammation is almost universally present, this is not a marginal finding. A 20% reduction in major cardiovascular events is larger than the effect size of most blood pressure medications and comparable to the benefit of high-intensity statin therapy. The next effect is one that most people, even those who follow health science closely, have not yet heard about. Effect number 2: kidney protection, 24% reduction in serious kidney outcomes. The FLOW trial tested semaglutide specifically in patients with type 2 diabetes and chronic kidney disease. Over a median of 3.4 years, semaglutide cut the risk of serious kidney outcomes, including kidney failure requiring dialysis, by 24%. All-cause mortality fell by 20% as well. But the mechanism is not simply through blood sugar control. GLP-1 receptors in the kidney directly influence glomerular filtration, the process by which the kidneys filter blood. When these receptors are activated, they reduce the inflammatory burden on renal tubular cells, decrease oxidative stress in kidney tissue, and improve the efficiency of filtration independently of glucose levels. For adults over 50, where kidney function naturally declines with age and where chronic kidney disease is dramatically underdiagnosed, this represents a protective effect that has no equivalent in existing preventive medicine. The FDA has now approved semaglutide specifically for cardiovascular risk reduction in people with obesity who do not have diabetes. Approval for kidney protective indications is expected to follow. The drug's scope of application is expanding precisely because the organ-level evidence is so consistent. Effect number 3, brain protection, reduced neuroinflammation and emerging Alzheimer's data. This is where the research becomes genuinely extraordinary and where the gap between what the science shows and what the public conversation covers is widest. GLP-1 receptors in the brain are concentrated in the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and hypothalamus, regions governing memory, executive function, and mood regulation. When activated, they reduce neuroinflammation, support synaptic plasticity, and appear to reduce the accumulation of amyloid beta plaques, the protein deposits most closely associated with Alzheimer's disease. Novo Nordisk's EVOKE and EVOKE Plus Phase 3 trials are specifically testing whether semaglutide can slow the progression of early Alzheimer's disease. These are not preliminary animal studies. They are large-scale randomized controlled trials in humans with results expected in 2026. A landmark analysis published in JAMA Network Open, following more than 60,000 adults, showed lower all-cause mortality, stroke risk, and dementia risk in adults taking semaglutide or Tirzepatide compared to matched controls. The neuroinflammation, amyloid accumulation, and insulin resistance in the brain that drive cognitive decline, GLP-1 receptor activation addresses all three simultaneously. Now the finding that stops researchers cold. Effect number 4, biological age reduction, 9% slowing of epigenetic aging in 32 weeks. This is the one that changes the entire conversation. A 2025 study presented at CROI, the Conference on Retroviruses and Opportunistic Infections, found approximately 9% slowing of epigenetic biological aging in semaglutide-treated patients over 32 weeks. Epigenetic aging, measured through DNA methylation patterns, is one of the most robust and widely validated measures of biological age in existence. It reflects not how old you are chronologically, but how rapidly your cells are aging at the molecular level. A 9% slowing in 32 weeks is not a marginal effect. It is a measurable deceleration of the biological aging process, something that has never been convincingly demonstrated for any pharmaceutical agent in humans at this scale. The mechanism is consistent with everything else in the GLP-1 research. Chronic inflammation is one of the primary drivers of epigenetic aging, the process researchers call inflammaging. GLP-1 receptor activation produces systemic anti-inflammatory effects that directly counteract inflammaging at the cellular level. The drug is not simply improving metabolic parameters, it may be slowing the fundamental biological process of aging itself. The U.S. government's ARPAH agency has committed $38 million to a 5-year trial called VITAL-H that will directly test semaglutide for health span extension in humans. This is not fringe science. This is federally funded longevity research at the highest level. Effect number 5, sleep apnea, FDA-approved indication beyond diabetes and obesity. Tirzepatide, the next-generation GLP-1 and GIP dual agonist marketed as Mounjaro and Zepbound, received FDA approval for obstructive sleep apnea in 2024. This approval was based on clinical trials showing significant reductions in apnea events that exceeded what would be expected from weight loss alone. Sleep apnea is not merely a sleep quality issue. It is a major independent cardiovascular risk factor, increasing the risk of hypertension, atrial fibrillation, heart attack, and stroke. It is also strongly linked to cognitive decline and dementia risk, and it affects an estimated 30% of adults over 50, with the majority undiagnosed. The FDA approval of a GLP-1 drug specifically for sleep apnea is clinically significant because it represents regulatory acknowledgement that these drugs have organ-level effects that cannot be attributed to weight loss alone. Apnea events are a direct measure of airway physiology and neural respiratory control, not a proxy for body weight. Effect number 6. Mental health and addiction. Unexpected signals from brain reward circuits. Early but consistent signals are emerging from multiple studies suggesting that GLP-1 receptor activation in the brain's reward circuits reduces cravings for alcohol, nicotine, opioids, and other addictive substances. Mood improvements have also been widely reported in clinical populations, beyond what would be expected from weight loss or improved metabolic health. The mechanism is biologically coherent. GLP-1 receptors in the ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens, the brain's primary reward processing regions, modulate dopamine signaling. When these receptors are activated, the compulsive reward-seeking behavior associated with both food cravings and substance use is reduced through the same pathway. Multiple dedicated clinical trials for alcohol use disorder and nicotine dependence are now underway. The implications for adults over 50, where alcohol use disorders, smoking-related disease, and mood disorders represent major contributors to health span reduction, are potentially profound. If you recognize this broader picture of GLP-1 biology, what comes next is the framework for applying it. Now for the part that matters most, how to think about this research as an adult over 50 and how to have a more complete conversation with your physician. First, reframe the conversation with your doctor. The more clinically relevant starting questions are not about how much weight you want to lose. They are, what is your cardiovascular risk profile? Do you have early signs of kidney function decline? Is there a family history of Alzheimer's? Do you have untreated sleep apnea? Do you have chronic systemic inflammation, elevated hsCRP, high triglycerides, visceral fat accumulation? These are the domains where GLP-1 receptor agonists now have clinical evidence behind them. If your physician is not asking about these when evaluating your candidacy or when declining to discuss these medications, this research gives you the basis for a more complete conversation. Second, understand the current and expanding FDA indications. As of mid-2026, GLP-1 receptor agonists are FDA approved for type 2 diabetes management, cardiovascular risk reduction in adults with obesity or overweight without diabetes, chronic weight management, and obstructive sleep apnea. Kidney protective indications are in late-stage review. Additional cardiovascular indications, including heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, are approved in select patients. The indication landscape is expanding rapidly as trial data accumulates. Third, the critical safety consideration for adults over 50, muscle loss. A 2025 retrospective cohort study involving 432 patients showed semaglutide was associated with significant muscle mass reduction and functional decline in older adults with type 2 diabetes, particularly at higher doses. When weight is lost rapidly through GLP-1 therapy without concurrent resistance training and adequate protein intake, a significant portion of that weight loss can come from lean muscle mass rather than fat mass alone. Clinical recommendation: if you are over 50 and using GLP-1 therapy, resistance training 2 to 3 times per week, and protein intake of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight daily are not optional lifestyle additions. They are essential components of safe and effective GLP-1 use in older adults. Fourth, natural GLP-1 optimization remains the foundation. for adults who are not candidates for pharmaceutical GLP-1 therapy or who want to maximize the benefit of their natural GLP-1 system. The strategies covered in our previous video remain the highest evidence approach: soluble fiber, protein at breakfast, sleep optimization, berberine, curcumin, gut microbiome diversity, and cold exposure. These strategies do not produce the magnitude of effect that pharmaceutical GLP-1 agonists achieve, but they activate the same biological pathways and represent the most evidence-supported natural approach available. Important note: GLP-1 receptor agonists are prescription medications. Nothing in this video constitutes medical advice or a recommendation to start, stop, or modify any medication. These conversations require individual medical evaluation and physician supervision, particularly given the muscle loss risk in adults over 50. Today you heard the research that the weight loss conversation has been drowning out. Ozempic and the broader class of GLP-1 receptor agonists is not primarily a weight loss drug. It is a drug that activates protective receptor sites across virtually every major organ system in the human body, a drug that reduces cardiovascular events by 20% in trials enrolling nearly 18,000 people, that protects kidney function by 24% in high-risk populations, that reduces neuroinflammation and is currently being tested as an Alzheimer's prevention agent in phase 3 trials, that slows biological aging markers by approximately 9% in 32 weeks, that received FDA approval for sleep apnea through mechanisms independent of weight loss, and that shows early signals for addiction reduction through brain reward circuit modulation. Weight loss is real. Weight loss matters, but weight loss is the headline, not the story. The story is that GLP-1 receptors are distributed throughout virtually every organ system, and that activating them may represent one of the most broadly protective pharmacological interventions ever developed for the aging human body. That story deserves a different conversation with your doctor than "I want to lose weight." If this video changed how you think about this class of medications, please hit the like button. It helps this channel grow and reach more people who deserve the full picture. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Share this with someone who has been dismissing Ozempic as a celebrity diet drug. The science says it is something considerably more important than that, and leave a comment right now. Tell me, did you know about the cardiovascular and brain protection data before watching this video, and is this changing the conversation you want to have with your doctor? I read every comment personally and and your question could become our next video. I'm Dr. Carter, I'm here, and I'll see you in the next video.